All right. Hello, everybody. All right. So we're going to be talking about multi-teams, sibling teams, something along those lines. I'm Allen Gregory. I've been doing FIRST Robotics since 2003 when I was a freshman in high school, and have basically been involved ever since. I took a little bit of time off freshman year, but I was still at like 2 events and was helping do things. But ever since then, I've pretty much been mentoring. Got on with Spectrum in 2012, their sophomore season, and have been with them for over a decade now, working with that program.
And I'm Norman Morgan. I'm the founding mentor for 2468 Team Appreciate. Started in 2008 and started 2 additional teams in the last 4 years. And in addition, I have 30 kids doing FTC, and I have 15 kids doing a drone robotics contest at my high school that I'm responsible. So 160 kids total in our after-school program.
All right, so sibling teams are a old and kind of new modern thing that's happened. Recently, right before, I guess, last season, sometime or so in the fall, FIRST had put out some guidelines. There's some very important reasons they're not rules, they are guidelines. Pretty much every team that is running multi-teams in an organization does it a little bit differently. No one's doing it exactly the same, and we're all kind of just figuring out how it works. There's an official document that kind of goes through it. There's an FAQ in that document, but most of the summary is not at all about how the robots work. The guidelines pretty much don't touch on it. It's really just about the student experience and awards more than anything else. So it talks about when starting a team, making sure you are like answering all the questions specifically, because whether you get a rookie number or a veteran number is like a little bit of black magic. Like no one really knows exactly how that works. There's probably details, but I don't know. I have 8515 when we started our team. Theirs are both veteran numbers. They were pretty much the same way. I answered all the questions truthfully. I'm pretty sure he did. I don't know. People ask why we got a rookie number. I don't know. Yeah, the biggest ones is like at each event, each student is supposed to only represent one team, but students can be on multiple teams. So I'll get to it later, but all of our students are registered for both of our teams on like the FIRST website. Mentors are and can be on multiple teams. So all of our mentors mentor both teams at each event. And then the award guidelines are pretty much there so that they were worried that teams are trying to get like 2 shots at impact. Like if you send 2 students with the same presentation and talking about the same things twice, that wouldn't be exactly fair. So there's a little bit of things just try to make it fair there. There's a couple different options for how to do it. Basically, one team you can submit for just one team and the other teams don't submit. Or you can have like 2 completely different presentations, essays, everything, and like talking about the team things that your 2 teams do differently. So if your multi-team is really like 2 teams just in the same building, you can have 2 different impact presentations. And then judge interviews are all separate. It gets confusing. We'll talk about that. And then Dean's List should also be on the roster for the time they're interviewing. But again, they're guidelines, not rules. We had to break that one this year because one of our Dean's Lists for one student ended up being a drive team member for the other team. It was a whole thing. But we talked to FIRST about it. They were okay. It worked out. But the guidelines are pretty open. You're able to do it. And then for the rest of the day, we're going to kind of talk about how our teams do it. Well, actually, we're going to talk about first a couple other teams that are doing it that are notable. Like I said, teams have been doing it for a long time. Up in Michigan, if there's Michigan people in here, you have Robo-Dogs and Martians. Some of those teams are teams who have like absorbed another team into them, and then they still just work out of the same school. Mort and Mort Beta, that was kind of one of the first ones where they kind of started a JV style program. Recently, Wild Stang split, or not really split, but gained +1. So 112 is their other team as well. Team Scream and Team Scream Junior exist. There's probably a bunch of other ones. There's been different ones at different times. Some of them get creative. Wave for a little bit had Ripple as their other team, which is funny. So there's a bunch of them that have existed or different exist. Midnight Inventors in a couple of years or last year ran 2 teams with the same name under 2 numbers. So there's a lot of different ways you can do this. So how do we do it? So we started ours actually after Norm started his. So we saw how he was running Apprentice. And basically during the pandemic and like the lockdown, we knew we were going to have this big experience gap. We had students who weren't going to events. We didn't know what the events in 2021 were going to look like. We didn't know if they were going to be capped to where we could only bring 10 students to an event. And so we basically said, okay, let's register a second team, because if we can only take 10 students to an event, if we have 2 teams, we can take 20 students. We can fix our experience gap a little bit. We have a lot of students who are still involved. We were doing a lot of stuff virtually. So we're still trying to figure out how to make that work. So in 2021, we registered 8515, and we're able to take 2 teams to the one event we got to do that summer, which is called the Texas Cup for teams in Texas. And that did work out for us. We got more students able to compete with robots because we had this second team that year. We knew we didn't want to split the team. We didn't want like a whole separate like brand thing. We were on a very lean mentor base. It's basically, for most of Spectrum's career, it was myself and like 30 students. On the technical side, we have like teachers doing other things. Now we have 3 alumni back with us, but it's basically a 4-person mentor team actually running the technical side of everything. So it's not like we can split everybody up too much. So for us, it's pretty much just everyone is Spectrum. We just also have this other thing that new students have the opportunity to do. So every student registers on both teams on First Inspires. That also works because then you never break I-101, which is the rule that says you have to build your own robot. So all of our students are on both teams. So when our veteran students are like mentoring or helping, or if they have to like run a part on a lathe or something, they're never interfering with that rule because they're all on both teams. In general, for us, new members are directed towards working on Photon 8515. That's not a hard and fast rule. So a lot of times we'll have some juniors or seniors who join because their friends are already on the team or something. And a lot of times they'll just join straight onto Spectrum. Or we'll have some sophomores who want to do Photon twice. And they're like, oh, I want to help lead a little bit more. I don't think I'm quite ready, or I didn't do that much last year. Maybe they only came to a couple of events or didn't do a lot. So it's fine if you're on the team for 2 years. It's also fine if you never are on it at all. And there's kind of some middle ground where people will do it for a little bit and then jump over and do Spectrum work, or just be like, I just really want to do lathe, and I'll lathe for both teams. I don't care. For event, we were trying to figure out how do we do this without wearing ourselves out. We don't have a lot of people. Our team is reasonable. We took like 60 students total to all of our events, normally about 25 to 35 at any one event. So Photon competes at 2 districts. District makes this a lot easier because we're only paying that registration fee, so it's relatively cheap, where they get 2 events, 24 matches plus playoffs most of the time. We're in a situation where there are 3 districts in the greater Houston area, which is still 45 minutes to an hour drive for us for most of them, but it's still close enough that they're local. Normally we'll try to have them compete at their first event without 3847 also competing. So like our whole team can focus on getting them prepared and ready at that event. That lets them actually, drive, figure out how FRC works and everything. Because most of them, it's their first official event a lot of the time. Sometimes we'll have 3847 compete in week 1 and then they'll compete in week 2. This year is probably going to be the reverse, but something like that allows them to get into it, figuring out how to have all that responsibility, learning how the events work. And then they're much more prepared to help 3847 when we actually get to states and worlds. Week 4, both teams compete. That's our most hectic event. We double pit most of the time. We talk to the regional or the district coordinator so we can get both pits next to each other. And it is hectic and chaotic and a mess because we have 4 mentors trying to like herd everybody and double match schedules and everything else. Sharing tools, sharing supplies, all of that stuff. Specifically for us, we get this question a lot. 8515 will never compete at our district championship asterisk unless somehow they qualify and 3847 doesn't. There's the one asterisk that hopefully never happens, but if we somehow really screw things up, they will go then. Mostly for us, that because it keeps costs down, that's the $4,000 we don't have to pay for them to go. All of our students who are on 8515 can already go to state champs anyway. They get a state championship experience. They're just not driving that robot. We also feel like it's nice because it gives another group of students, a different group of students, that spot. So if we decline, someone else gets to go. That's good. It also allows us to focus the entire efforts and machinery and everything of our team at the 3847 trying to win a district championship and not spreading ourselves thin running this other robot match schedule, alliances, drama, whatever else is happening with that one. Okay, so Photon members, we're normally planning somewhere in the 20s for members, what we're trying to do that are like consistently showing up and are like part of this Photon team kind of. It's very wishy-washy sometimes when people show up a lot for the beginning of the season or come in the middle and join. Like we're a lot less rigid than almost every other FRC team. We're very, very loose in who can be on our team. We have students who are doing a bunch of other clubs and activities. We have people just bring their friends in. So it's hard to get like an exact number for who's on the team and who's not. At any build meeting, we normally have around like 10 students or so who are dedicated to working on the Photon robots and getting things going for that. Normally, we'll have one of our alumni mentors kind of in charge of that throughout build season, managing that build process, being the project manager for it. The last 2 years, it's been Mary Wynn. And then the other mentors will be helping when they need to use tools, helping with some of the design stuff, figuring out questions, anything like that. The Photon robot for the last 2 years has been the Everybot. That one of the big things is allows our students who are new to the team to not have to go at as fast as a pace and kind of not be lost when we're going through the intensity of the robot design process for the first time. They're able to come in, have basically like step-by-step instructions for how a robot works, and get a little bit of a different FRC experience than being on a more highly competitive team. So there's a lot less stress for them. They know they can make mistakes. They know like pretty much every day there's something for them to do exactly. They're not having to like, oh, wait on CAD, wait on something. And they're ready to get a lot of that hands-on experience very, very quickly and early for something that has a real deadline. They know they have a real events to compete at very early into their FRC careers. These are some of the quotes from students who have been a part of it for the last 2+ years. In how it's helped them get ready on the basics and basically decide if they really want to dedicate their full time and commitment to FRC in the way that we need to for our kind of leadership and our dedicated core group of Spectrum members. They get to drive early. They get to actually be on drive team. Some of those, like that's one of the things I didn't put in the slide, but for our qualification matches for Photon, we basically rotate through drive team members. So pretty much everybody who's new to the team can either drive or operate or human player or something in real matches their first year on the team, which for most teams you may never get to do if you don't happen to be selected to be on drive team. Where Spectrum, we select our drive team members and partly in the fall and then in the spring, and those are the only ones those 4 kids are the ones who are on drive team the whole year until the off season. Then we rotate a little bit more too. So yeah, getting that ability to familiarize themselves with the team, getting them very quickly to feel valued on the team, to feel like they have purpose and they have something that they're there to do that no one else is there to do. They're not like taking up space or they're not getting anybody's way. It kind of limits some of those hurdles that people build in their brain to make them not want to be there. Well, that's the goal at least, and it's worked mostly well for 2 years. One of the big reasons people think they can't do this, where they can't have a second team, is finances. It's the opposite, honestly. Starting a second team has made us money over the last 3 years. It is very cheap. It basically the cost is the registration fee for the district system, which is $6,000. The travel's mostly incidental. Our team, the students help pay for their hotels when we go, their local events. Food's not very expensive. So like the actual event cost isn't very much. It's one extra event because the other one they're all going to anyway. We do everything together for that one. If you do them both together, it wouldn't cost much more at all. Robot production cost is very cheap. We pretty much have all the parts already in the lab. They're building a relatively simple robot. We have those motors. We have that metal. It's mostly like scrap stuff. We'll pay a couple $100s for things that we didn't have from the Everybot or whatever. A lot of the time we're buying that stuff to help other Everybots anyway. So most of that's not very expensive. However, the thing that people don't realize is once you have a second team member, all those grants you apply for, you just apply twice. So when Haas gives us whatever, $4,000 on the Haas grant, we submit the form again, and now we have $8,000. When Analog Devices gives us $4,000, we have $8,000. When Texas Workforce gives us $1,000, we have $2,000. Like it, if you can field it, go at it. If you can field it, yes. And so like we're not making a lot of money, but I'm pretty sure over the last 3 years we're probably +3, +4,000. Like it has not cost us money. And it allowed us to give our students a better experience with a little bit more effort, because we do have to manage it. You do have to get another whole team and robot there to compete. But the cost isn't the limiting factor for this for most teams, right? If you don't like space, management, mentors, all of that does matter. But as long as if you're assuming you're paying your initial registration with over $6K in grants, which a lot of teams are, or like kind of those direct sponsorships where if you have an employee working with you type sponsorship, you can get another $6,000 for your team relatively easily. Okay, so how are we going to adapt Photon in the future? So this is where things get a little bit weirder. We've been running this for 2 years and we're like, it's okay. But we're starting to realize that the things they're learning on Photon don't translate as quickly to the Spectrum robots and how we do and build things there. And so they're not quite being able to use all that knowledge and skills as quickly. Like there's still a steep learning curve from the Photon Everybot to the 3847 design, swerve, kind of more do everything robots. So we're trying to figure out how to push more of the learning to the Photon level so those kids in that second year can be more ready to do a lot of the design and things. Same with like driver practice thing. Right now they're learning to drive tank that they never use again as soon as they're not on Photon. Because the plan is swerve forever at this point. So with that, 8515 is probably moving to swerve next year. We have enough knowledge and students and programmers who can make that work for them. Plan is to try to move more of the structure to be similar to the 3847 robots. So when they learn to build bumpers for Photon, they can just build the bumpers for 3847 if they want. Like they should be the same or very similar. Where the last few years we had like a different bumper mounting system and a whole different thing, and they were having to like relearn and recreate that, which doesn't help that translation and making it easy to move from team to team. Similarly, we're going to try to move the programming structure. We had been doing like the more simple WPI lib template structure for them, not like the one that we've kind of developed over the years for 3847. So we're going to move that out and make a slightly simpler one that people can learn a little bit easier, but they don't have to relearn everything. So the more that we can make the on-ramp of Photon, give them that whole year of experience that then is directly applicable to what we do pretty consistently year to year on Spectrum, it should be easier for those students to get on board. There's also more options for the different types of kind of pre-built robot designs already coming out now. So the announcement of the new FIRST Kitbot, we don't know what that's going to look like yet. There'll be something in the actual kit now. The Everybot, like we've been doing for the last few years. And then also Rev started doing their starter bot, which worked really well last year. So that's one of the options too. So we have to figure out kind of that first week of kickoff, what we're actually going to do this year as we start seeing those designs. Okay, finishing up my part. Some of these I already hit on, but the biggest advantages that we see from having the Sibling team is more students get that build and event experience very quickly, much earlier in their FRC careers than they can on most other teams, right? They sometimes get it in the off seasons, but it's still not quite the same pressure. You're not working with teams at the same level. You're not working with all the volunteers. You're not under as big of lights, all of that sort of thing. Students are able to work under a lot less pressure and allowed to make a lot more mistakes. Like students are able to make mistakes on Spectrum too, but we do a lot more to avoid them when the time pressure is so much when you're designing and trying to get out 2 robots in the 7-8 weeks, whatever it is. Where with the Everybot, it's like, oh, you drilled that hole wrong. Like, no big deal. Just drill it a little bit more wrong. Like, whatever. Just get it to work. Like, it's fine. Yeah, it doesn't. We'll figure it out with the Everybot. We're expecting. We're like, no, we're remaking that now. Like, that doesn't work. and again, they feel more integral. They can feel more like they have a place. It can get them to be more at home in our lab. And it just empowers them more to be like, oh, this is something I really can do very, very quickly. And then they can have that desire to do the really hard on-ramp learning stuff that it takes to design a very competitive FRC robot. Challenges, I know Norm's faced quite a few of these too. Making the students understand that relationship between the two teams, where we're like, no, everybody's on 3847, but also you're on 8515. Like, it's hard to explain it to other people who have been doing FRC for a long time. It's very hard to explain it to a 14-year-old. And not only for them to like understand it technically, but also get it to understand it culturally and how they interact. In 2022, one of our first like main year doing it fully back with a full build season and everything. There was a relatively large divide between the seniors who were largely running the Spectrum build that year. We were coming back from COVID and everything, and they weren't interacting very much with the new students who were doing Photon, and like the Photon students felt that, and there was a lot of feedback. So we're working through how to make that better, and this past year was a lot better, but it still can improve. And then a lot of that also is just in build season. There's a ton of time pressure, figuring out how to balance those priorities so that mentor time, student time, machine time can work with both teams. And you're not at any point, like Photon's not hindering the Spectrum build, but we're also not making Photon a bad experience for students. We can't do that. And so just making sure that there's a balance there, priorities are in place, build schedules are there, that sort of thing, to get the season moving along nicely, that you can get to events and everybody can have the good experience that we're trying to have with both teams. Okay, I think that's my last slide. Norm, if you want to start talking about the A-team model.
So a lot of things I'm going to cover, similarities, Allen. So I've got a lot more information on slides here. If you request a slide deck from either Allen or myself, my speaker notes has lots more details on each individual slide. So I'm going to go quickly through material and then try to get to the point. Maybe we can get some Q&A here in the room. So it's multiple teams. Why? Plain and simple. I'm a basketball coach. I learned to shoot layups by shooting layups. And I taught kids how to shoot layups by shooting layups lots of times. I'm an educator. I'm a teacher. I teach project-based learning, and I believe learning hands-on, especially in projects like this, are the best way. I can sit and tell you all day long how to solder a wire, but until you solder a wire, you're probably not going to learn how to do it. Just so for me, it was about the experience. I was the biggest advocate for districts in Texas before districts started, because more play, less money. We were going to 4 tournaments a year, costing us $18,000 for my one FRC team, and we were approaching 75 kids. And about week 4, I would start to have about 20 kids show up because they didn't have anything to do. So when districts came about, I was already ready. We were going to do it 1 year, see how districts played out, understand the scoring, understand the tournaments, understand how that worked, and then try to find the advantages for me to make the experience for my kids better. Bottom line, better experience for kids, not more chances to win, not more chances at awards, not more chances at advancement. It's pure and simple. Fiona and I from FIRST Headquarters had a conversation last year. I said, my responsibility is every kid that walks through that door for my team should have a positive winning experience. Fiona's role at FIRST Headquarters is totally different. Her focus is every kid in FIRST. And so we have to try to fit that. And for me, multiple teams answered that answer for me and gave me an opportunity to have more kids have more opportunities. We used to have 7 FTC teams, required all freshmen and sophomores to do FTC, and they would come to FRC as juniors. And 1 year I'd have this really strong team with a whole bunch of seniors. And the next year I'd have these juniors who were leading because they were on a strong senior team and they had no idea. And so we struggled just to work on projects, to get leadership. And so it was this up and down cycle. And so the second team was an attempt to eliminate that up and down cycle of leadership and skills. And so we started the second team, which was Team Apprentice in 2020. COVID hit. Allen mentioned Texas Cup. They said we could enter our teams. We built a brand new robot for both teams during COVID. So we had 4 robots. So Texas said you can bring an extra team per number. So we took 4 teams, an all girls team, a freshman team, a sophomore team, and a senior team. And we competed. And we came home and I was like, it seems to work pretty well. 2 teams. And then school started and we had 37 first-year freshmen, sophomores enroll in class. And as Allen said, they were going to limit us to numbers. I was like, how am I going to get these kids to come back? So I went to my board president and said, we're expanding. Who all expanded coming out of COVID? Those are a few hands. Very few people did. We did. And those 37 freshmen, sophomores who are on that team now are going to be half of my 2468 team this year. So we gave them an opportunity to be successful. So for us, it literally was, how do we move forward? I'll quickly move through these. 2468, most veteran team, typically 40 to 50. Custom build robot, approach the whole game. Our number 1 outreach team, absolutely focused on impact award, absolutely focused on leadership. It is part of their responsibility is to lead our program. Every Tuesday night, they lead our sub-team trainings on 6:30 to 8:30. That is their responsibility to teach the leadership for the future. I stole it from the Boy Scouts. Absolutely. Freshman comes to class, comes to meetings. They see seniors teaching. They know that the expectation is going to be when they get to be a senior, that's what I'm going to be expected to do. So the model is self-replicating in that aspect. Apprentice, the last 2 years have been twin model with 2468. The one problem with that, this year I have probably our weakest design team ever, or in 5 years. And if I didn't do something about it, next year I would have a group of seniors that have very little design experience. Amazing programmers, lazy electronics, amazing manufacturing. So we are not going to have twin designs this year because I think it will drive the Team Apprentice students to own their design and will give them opportunity to do some design for the future. Yes. No. They actually work together. We had designers working together from both teams on every subsystem. All of our manufacturing we do in groups of 3. So when we're running the CNC part, there's one alpha, there's one apprentice, there's one appreciate there. So they're technically making their parts for their robot and they're learning from the veterans. But we took 2 designs the last 2 years, twins. This year had an amazing opportunity, set the world record at San Antonio, actually ended up in the same division, got to pick each other. And well, we tripped and fell twice and eliminated ourselves. So all of our mentors mentor all 3 teams. I have about 14 total in the building each week. I have 3 or 4 mentors that are once a week for a couple hours. I have one from here in San Jose that calls in every Wednesday, every Saturday for outreach. I have one that works for Dean Kamen at DECA that calls in from New Hampshire every Saturday. But I have 12 that are in the building somehow, some way, every single week, and they work with all 3 teams. The one thing I will say is I have 6 mentors that have been with my program for more than 10 years. Stability, institutional knowledge, know what we're going to do from year to year. Absolute key to success, in my opinion. So keeping those mentors around is key for us. I'm very different than Allen. I'm amazed at the things that he does in terms of number of mentors and what they accomplish with Spectrum and with Photon. And if you followed his blog and you followed the open build, like, are there 28 hours in a day in Houston? Because there's not that many hours in a day in Austin, Texas. So we do focus a lot on females in our program. Our overall program this year, 72% of our leadership positions are girls. Those are not appointed. Those are earned and identified by fellow students and mentors. We don't have an election. I don't have selection. I don't have a president. We have sub-team leads. We have programming leads. We have design leads, scouting leads, and 72% of the overall program is females. 7 years ago, had a girl come to me, she says, I want to choose my roommate before I graduate when we travel, because there was one girl on our team. So we've really worked hard to change that. We're at about 25 to 27%. If you get over 29% of girls participating in STEM, you're far above the normal average. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
We don't have a class. We're fully active.
Absolutely. I have 96% of 160 kids in class every single day. Don't. Yes, this would probably be. But I know Team Scream in Missouri. Michael Wright and I have visited many, many times. He talked about us doing it. Allen's doing it outside the school. There's definitely models. Libby came and did it for 2 years. Libby's not doing with Midnight Inventors. They didn't do 2 teams this year because they lost 6 mentors, and they were literally down to 4. And so they have 175 kids on their one team. They have an A-B work schedule. A works Monday, Wednesday, B works Tuesday, Thursday. And so there's definitely some models out there to help address some of those questions. Yes. Nope. I don't pick them. The mentors and previous leads do, with approval by me. We used to have a 18 by 30 room and an 18 by 30 shop up until year 10. Could not. We worked in the cafeteria. We worked in the hall. We worked outside the building. We worked with the school district. We helped pass a bond, and we got an 8,000 square foot additional facility, which houses 4 classrooms for the school day. We're totally separate from the rest of campus, and that's hours every day after school, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we are very fortunate in that.
And if you're already bringing in freshmen into your program, whatever they, or new students, that number of new students can be enough to run a team, right? They can build in everybody. You can do it like you're at events you go to, you know, there are teams that only have 5 to 10 students. So you can do it with that many, whatever new students you're already bringing in. You don't have to expand.
One of the slides I'm going to address, not even necessarily having a second team, but some teams that are using this example as a team within the team. It's really not mine. It's not his. It's even a step down from his, but is technically a team with a team. And I'll address that one of the slides later. You had a question? Okay. Next, Team Alpha. This is our youngest team. Have to be in my class. I teach them every day. We spend the fall semester training. Lots of things we go over. Everybody learns SolidWorks in my program. They needed to learn to design, and then everybody learns to run the lasers, because I want them to take them from a design project to a final manufacture project and see that the first iteration doesn't always work. And it can be as simple as a tic-tac-toe or a wooden puzzle, and that's where we start. Tuesday nights, they're required to go to trainings every Tuesday night, 6:30 to 8:30 on Tuesday nights, led by the seniors. Every other Thursday starting in September is our team culture, where we start to talk about our team motto. We're absolutely big on legacy. Legacy is a key word for me. Legacy is, what do you leave behind for others to use as an example for the future? It's either positive or negative. One of the two. It's not the same. I'm an absolute believer in, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse, because somebody somewhere is getting better, and when you meet them, they will beat you. That's in life, in everything you do. not just an athletic perspective or a competitive perspective, but that is our mantra in our program. So training is critical and key. So when we get to contest season in January, they have an idea of what they're going to be doing already. So if you're a rookie team, I'm going to be talking about some of this here. If you're mentoring new teams or you're wanting to resurrect or restart your team, I'll be talking about some of the EveryBot stuff and the MCC and the starter bots this afternoon, which some of the things, if you sit in that one, you'll hear some here as well. Success starts when school starts for us. Training is critical. If you go into a season and they've not trained, they're not going to learn. And I'm going to get to a Maslow's, to some learning information, some learning research in a minute. We absolutely believe in the students teaching the students, and them transferring that institutional knowledge. With 160 kids, I don't care if I had 40 mentors. 40 mentors couldn't train and transfer that knowledge from one year to the next. Our kids are around each other continually throughout the day and throughout the year. So that knowledge starts to get transferred from student to student about how we do things or what are techniques or what are expectations. Build season, we normally work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, 6:30 to 8:30. Saturdays from 9 to 5:30. Kids are expected to do 8 to 10 hours a week on their team. They can choose that. If they have conflicts, they can communicate with me. It's not an absolutely hard and fast, but we set it as a very clear expectation. And we all know if you set expectations, kids usually do what? They rise to the expectation. And once they get in the building and they start having fun, oh, coach, it's already 8:30. We got to go home. Coach, are you going to be open on Sunday? Come on. We'd really like to get in and dry practice on Sunday. July 4th this year, I had a kid message me, are you considering opening the shop this afternoon? No. Veteran students, we do have a coach dedicated to each team that coaches them and is responsible for their strategy and is responsible. I am the project manager every day in class. So we do a lot of those things in class so we can set goals and roles. What are we going to get accomplished this week? What are we going to get accomplished tonight? So that is part of what we use. Our spring in class, there is no teaching going on. The learning is the contest. And so that is another way I have aspect to have them every day in class, which I absolutely know is an advantage. Robot design, 2468 custom, 2687. We're going to take something off the table this year. This last year's game, if I'd have taken something off the table, I'd have told apprentice, you can't score high cones. If we were talking about last year's game, I'd have told them they couldn't do traversal. So limit them and make them designed to own. We still want to get them to state champs. We still want to get apprentice and appreciate to world champs. That's our goal. It's very clear. I actually tell Alpha, you're a freshman, sophomore developmental team, but you're going to be competing in the varsity division. And I expect you to win. And here's how we're going to get you to state champs. And that's what we're going to call as a victory. All right. We talk about our goals and roles. We'll talk about those here in a minute and let them know very clearly what is defined as success for that team. For apprentice, our goal, we want them to win a blue banner. That's a pretty high goal. We want them to win an award during the school year, during the season. That's a pretty high goal, but 3 years running now, apprentices won an award. Last year's the first time they won a blue banner. We put it out there. We're going to strive for it, but we're not going to measure the success of the team on whether we won the blue banner or not. It's a goal that we're going to try to reach for. Past season events, we try to take all three to both same two tournaments. This year, I think that will be more difficult, and it's always difficult to try to get all three. This year, we're definitely we're goals to take 2, 4, 6, 8 to a tournament by themselves. Number one reason is I want 2, 6, 8, 7 to have to be the leaders at a tournament. The whole purpose of 2, 6, 8, 7 is to continue to develop their growth. More importantly for me is to develop leaders for the future. So that is, if you were to ask me what are the roles, 2, 4, 6, 8, win Einstein, win Impact Award. That is our clear and honest goals, that's what we're going to talk about trying to build and accomplish. 2687, your goal, develop a leadership for the future. 2689, develop a foundation that you can build on for the future. There's the 3 goals, overarching goals for those 3 teams. And everything we do in that tries to drive toward that. Finances. I actually have a pitch and fundraising team. Who has a pitch and fundraising team in the room? What's their goal, Tom? They have a specific goal? What? Okay. 55. Anybody else? Okay. How many classes at your campus teach them to go ask for $10,000? How many classes on your campus teach them to write a business email and set up a pitch? There's probably not a traditional class on campus. If there's one thing I would tell you to go home from this conference this year, if you're going to take from me, every kid on your team before they graduate should participate in that, because that's a skill they'll need in every career they go into. I don't care what it is. They got to sell themselves for a job. They've got to sell their project manager. They've got to sell a product, any of those things. What makes your program different than any other program on campus? This right here, that would be one of them. And so your kids that are on the pitch and presentation team, or if they're fundraising, grants, we get some grants for each individual team. I know ARM is one that they will only give us 1 grant for our program. They won't give us a grant per team. Haas, as Allen said, gave us a grant for all 3 teams. We've had a pretty good opportunity. The Alpha robot is $1,500 plus the budget. Plus the kit of parts. And it's really, we probably don't spend $1,500 because, like Alan said, we have most of it in the house, but I'm teaching them a skill and a strategy for the future of build within a budget of time, build within a budget of mentors, build with a budget of money, build within a budget of skills. So everything, again, is trying to build for the future. Benefits, we could go on all day long here. Most important, create success for the future. Creates institutional knowledge. The biggest thing I think is Aaron Atsumi. First year, he built our KitBot chassis. We go to our second tournament and a team showed up with a KitBot chassis, Andy Mark chassis in a box. And Aaron came to me and says, "Coach, can I help them build their chassis?" I didn't have to sign him. He'd done it at home, and he spent all afternoon from 5 o'clock till we got it ran out of the pits, and the next morning to get that robot built for them because he had built one for our team. Was the tournament better for those other individuals? Yes. And we talked to our kids about we want a tournament to be better because we were there and make the experience better for other students. So we try to do a lot of training at home so they can impact others at the tournament. Concerns? Misunderstanding of what it is. Who's heard of John Vanoon? JVN from Robo Wranglers, Vex, currently with Crossbow Electronics. John and I talked last year, and he's like, "Tell me what your purpose of this is." And he'd just seen us from the outside looking in. And he came up to me at World Champs, and he walked up to me and says, "I kind of understand now what you're doing. It never made sense looking out, looking in, but I see exactly what you're talking about now." And it was just a simple little conversation. So if you have some questions about it, reach out to some of the ones that Alan mentioned, or absolutely reach out to us. But that's the misunderstanding of what it is. Money can be a problem. For us, running 3 robots, machining resources. You got a plan to be sure you can get all the items made that you need. Design sub-team for us in our current model was weaker, as I mentioned. Judging confusion. Apprentice and Alpha do not do outreach. Apprentice and Alpha do not do fundraising. Apprentice and Alpha don't have a budget for a program. We run it as a program fee, and Appreciate is the one that does the fundraising and does the outreach, and we record those hours. And that first year, it was difficult for judges to understand that. And now there's been some address from FIRST and some of the guidelines there that help us in that aspect. Inter-program competition. Apprentice wants to be appreciated. They're sophomore, second-year sophomores, maybe third-year juniors, a little bit weaker. They want to be that robot over there who's winning the big awards and goes undefeated at a tournament. And we get back home, and it's a little bit of jealousy creeps in. It's definitely something that has to be addressed if you're competing at the same level, especially the same robots. It's, again, be very transparent, be very open, be very honest. My apprentice coach is an ex-coach himself. He's won 3 state championships in rugby in the state of Texas. He's competitive. I went to college on an athletic scholarship and was a high school basketball coach for 20 years. I'm competitive. He and I work in the building every day. But when we get on the field, it's red versus blue, and I'm going to win. And he's thinking it's red versus blue, and red sleeves are going to win. After the game, we get back to the pit, something's wrong, we all work on the robots together. But that inner competition can be an issue. Fall semester training, this is some of the stuff I'll leave in there that you can, if you're interested in looking, but we do an awful lot in the fall of training skills that will get us ready for the season so that they can move through the season quicker. Fall semester classroom, a lot of activities we do. We do every bot research for alpha, and then they have to design a robot within that. We make them try to design one before it's revealed, and then they compare it to the actual every bot that comes out. We're going to build the every bot though first and go compete with that because that's their guidelines, and make them follow that. Team goals for me, for Alpha, the third team, this is what they are. Win 50% of your matches. Win an RP every single match. You go look at state of Texas and districts since we started. If they do that, those 2 factors, they will be number 10 ranked robot or higher, which means they're probably an alliance captain, which means they're playing Saturday after lunch, which is goal number 2, play Saturday after lunch. If they play Saturday after lunch at both their tournaments, they've qualified for state champs. I'd love for them to make playoffs at state champs, but it's not a goal. To be perfectly honest with you, no Alpha members in here. I don't want Alpha to go to world champs. Not getting that makes them hungry. So they come home and they're motivated to want to go to work and do more. So I hope Alpha falls short of making world champs always, because that will drive them to want to be better. They want to be appreciated. They want to be apprentice, which drives the leaders to rise to the top and show up, get home from world champs in April. And Dharma comes in at 8 o'clock and says, "Coach, can I drive the robot today?" Freshman wanting to drive the robot the day we got home from world champs. Okay. Oh, were we? All right. Okay. Questions quickly. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. We're easy to find.
I love the fundamental nature of it, the old nature of it. I see the purpose of it. When would you recommend starting that? Right? Year 3, you don't have a plethora of resources all around to build that.
That's you understanding your resources is one of the first things every team has to do, just to understand what their goals are and how it's going to work. So it was a big decision for us, even when we were doing it. We've been doing it for a decade. I've been doing it for longer. So it's just, can you manage it? What's that going to look like? One of the things we didn't hit on, but yeah, other teams are doing it just internally. So before you, and we were doing that already, before you actually register a real team, have freshmen build an every bot and never compete with it. So like Paradox ran a sophomore and freshman team. They never competed, but they were scrimmaging together. They were doing all that stuff and never actually registered a real number.
I'll definitely be around. I'm doing the every bot presentation afternoon, and I won't fill the time.
We have a sustainability and growth roundtable in
Yep.
here later too. So
So we'll
yeah, that's
address
another
some of
time
these
to talk
things
about
there,
this.
and I'm around for lunch if you need to ask some questions that you can get to today. Thank you for attending. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, everybody.